Home, brothers. This video is about the great colonization conspiracy from China, and also the grand part of that is the lying about the population figures, and also a very strong or artificially strong emphasis on the so-called one-child policy. So, number one, the actual population of China is 1.6 or 1.7 billion people, around in there. They're lying by about the population of the United States. The reason that they're lying about their official figures, and they lie about all their official figures, the reason they're doing that is because each individual official from the public level gets rewards if he says that he has a lower population. So in our personal experience, Cousin Shamrock and myself have never been counted in a census. More interestingly, his wife nor his kids have ever been counted in a census. His wife is Chinese, and so the census people just kind of skip around, and they seem to skip us. So this is what happens on the street level, and this is why when there was an expose, it was Jiangsu Satellite TV, Jiangsu Weishi is our province, is Jiangsu. The satellite TV for that had an expose and a program about the real population figures. And about 7 or 8 years ago, let's say 8 or 9 years ago, they determined it would be 1.6 or 1.7 billion people. And I think the population, okay, so let's say 1.7 billion people by today. I don't know. But it's an enormous amount of people that they're lying about and not counting. This also helps their policy of forced colonization of the rest of the world. They're forcing colonization through economic policies by owning all these ports, the Panama Canal, producing about 1/4 of the world's internationally traded goods, and through this soft power they've gained access to citizenship to every country in the world. So Chinese can even go be getting visas in Sudan and in really weird places. They can also get citizenship in America, Italy, and all these other places. And the flip side of that is that you're not allowed to get citizenship in China. So China has a zero immigration policy, and it is effectively enforced. I have never seen a foreigner staying here who's gotten a Chinese passport, fake or otherwise, and there's just no such thing. And so this talks about the conspiracy. Now, the Chinese right now are beginning to get critical of this one-child policy. One-child policy is not really what people think it is. There's actually no law in China saying you're only allowed to have one child, and the policy itself does not state how many children. It merely became assumed after years and years of practice within the very city centers in China. It only became assumed that the number was 1, but it's actually not written anywhere as far as I know. And the enforcement of it is also very similar to what's happening in all countries. There's a demographic shift that they're trying to enforce. I say they, I mean by international bankers who created communism, and we all know who those special people are. They definitely want to kill as many Chinese babies as they can, and their idea of population control is killing a lot of babies. And so with the initiation of this policy, which was widely very unpopular in China, if you watch the YouTube video produced by Chinese guys living in America, I think it's called Rethinking China's One-Child Policy, They show official stats and official things, and there was a 90% disagreement. 90% of Chinese said we don't want this population limitation, the so-called one-child policy. So it's not very evenly enforced at all, and it's enforced specifically on city-going people, which is about, let's say, 40%, 45% of the population. And then the rest of the population has 2 or 3 or 4, however many kids they want, especially if they're minorities. Now, the way this works on the street is that the minorities have better cohesion. So your Jew-like Uyghurs, and then you have your Hui Muslims, which are another type of Muslim which I tend to like better. And then there's all these other different people. They seem to have a special policy where they can just have as many kids as they want while they're cohesive. So I'm pretty sure that the Han Chinese government has sort of gone into their neighborhoods and tried to levy fines and do things to them, but they aren't successful because these groups have pretty strong brotherhoods and pretty tight-knit societies that protects itself from outsiders. And so the policy is sort of unofficially, they just say, well, okay, let all the minorities produce as many children as they want. Demographically, the numbers look pretty shocking. When I was studying Chinese about 13 years ago. My book was called Elementary Chinese Readers. I highly recommend it. But it stated that officially the percentage of Han Chinese in China's society is 96%. And the other 4% were what they call these 56 nationalities. What they mean by that is 56 races. And I would call them sub-races of the Han nationality, because to most of us they would look Chinese just like other Chinese. But they may have, typically they have one difference, like they might have slightly curly hair, or they might have hazel eyes. Some of them could grow a beard and other things like this. Never 2 or more different features at once, and so they always appear to be pretty much Chinese, or what they call Hanhua, which is Hanified groups. And these are 56 officially recognized groups. And where does that official recognition go? Well, it goes to the canteens, and it goes to the universities, and when you pick up your food and you pay your tuition, they do it just like in the States. They got quotas, and they try to quote-unquote help out these groups. Well, this will bring us full circle back to where I started this discussion. Is these people claiming to be of minorities, most of them are lying now, and they're lying because they want these benefits, and in reality they have very little, if any, of these nationalities in them. So there is a situation where there is a demographic shift. Officially, they've lost 6 percentage points. Officially, the Han Chinese have gone from when I started studying Chinese 13 years ago to now. They've lost 6 percentage points, and they're saying that there's only 90% are Han Chinese now. Han Chinese is kind of what Chinese take as what whites would consider Europeans. We think, well, Italians and Dutch, they're like way different, and these groups are all very different, but they're considered as a whole to be Han. And so even just the distinction of Han with 56 sub-Hanified races is a highly simplified picture that you're getting, because there is that tighter cohesion, there's more anarchy, less central government in Asia in general, and I don't think central government has ever played an enormously strong role in China, and that's why they have these pretty tight-knit groups that have developed into separate and distinct races. And one of the books you have to read in China is an ancestry book called Beijing, and that's a book you have to read when you're little, and you have to learn about where your surname came from and what group that is. even though most of these surnames have already been wiped into one race that they call the Han race. And I think that particular distinction or non-distinction was created also with the creation of the fake Chinese state, with the fake revolution and an actual just change of power structure concerning who is raping these weak and easily addicted Chinese people. And only recently have these Chinese people been lifting themselves up out of so-called poverty, but we would just call it just filth and ignorance, and smoking opium till they're laying on the floor and they can't do anything, heavily addicted to alcohol, betel nuts, opium, everything that you could possibly think of. They were, and still mostly are, addicted to these things. It's just that if you even have just 6% of this population, I would say even 4 or 5% of this population, if we readjust it for being 1.67 billion, then they only have to produce as much as an American, these 5% Chinese, and the economy has already surpassed the U.S. economy as a whole. And this is something that's getting confused in the economics debate, like, is China actually going to be more powerful than the U.S.? And the individualist Westerners are saying, well, no, because their average per capita GDP will still be very low, and they don't get it, that in global politics that's not how power is, that's not how it's levied. If a certain group acts together, then that whole group's resources are counted as a whole. And you can't say that's not fair because there are 1.7 billion people. It is fair because they decided to work together. And guess who's not working together? Well, the recent Ramsey Paul video and other things are mentioning this. Even what's-his-face conservative columnists are saying, well, whites did not act together on this recent election to at least have a white president of what we'd formerly thought of as a white nation, at least prior to 1965. And this is something whites need to consider, especially in North America. This relates to circumcision as well, because as we uncircumcise ourselves and we un-Jew ourselves, we become more and more cohesive as a group, and we love our parents more, and we bond better with other people, and we become more normal. And this is a positive benefit of shedding this horrible right that has been forced upon most of the American people, including women up to 1987, and now including men, only men up until now. And perhaps if we continue to struggle against circumcision and mutilation of men in North America, we might succeed in bringing the neonatal rate below 50% in the next 10 years. It's been a very, very slow process for America, and I hold that it's because it's a very strictly Zionist-occupied territory. You have the New York banking district, diamond district, gold, jewelry, what they call the joint. You have the international banking mafia. The special white people have a stronger presence here than even in Great Britain and in Australia. And then you add to that the U.S. is sort of secretly actually an ex-prison colony where quote-unquote indentured servants were here to serve out their prison terms. So unfortunately, a lot of our older American blood is the blood of prisoners, and so this is a lot of karma to deal with. We have no idea what those people did. Some people said they simply were creditors, but when somebody's a creditor, why are they crediting? Were they a gambling addict? Were they a drug addict? What was their issue? So there's always been a strict difference between Americans and Europeans in terms of the quality and the level of normalcy. I think it's a really good goal for every American, every white American, to see themselves as a European, to go back to Europe, or at least spiritually begin to see themselves as an Aryan in general, and not do that. So again, let's recap. The big scam going on right now is that China has stood up just enough to where they're becoming more powerful than the U.S., which is fine, but know what this entails. It's colonialism, it's imperialism, and you're beginning to be treated unfairly in a one-way direction. You have to do a lot of things for Chinese that Chinese will not do for you, and you'll always be foreigner, as the word Laowai means, and you are welcome here for a visit. You're welcome here even for a year of a work visa. I still leave the doors open to this place open for brothers that come for visits. We've had many visitors to this place, and they enjoy themselves a lot. It's kind of the easy life here. It's not really all that hard otherwise, but you keep in mind that there is an unequal relationship, and it could be a positive thing, because maybe the Chinese are then forcing you to really find out what your heritage is and get back to that. I don't think any of us can really realistically say we're Americans. If we could before, I don't think we could really say it now. It is a very messed up, demographically messed up nation. It's a nation on paper. It's not a real nation in traditional terms, and you ought to start looking for a local colony or cult to join, or start thinking about going overseas to rejoin with your ancestors or people of your same ideology. And finally, we're not in the stage where we have to propagandize a lot against porn and masturbation, and that work is mostly being done. There are probably hundreds of thousands of men online right now that are actively commenting against the sexualization in society. A very, very different scene from when celibacy.info, the Brotherhood of the Sacred Word, started. It's a very, very different scene. Our stage right now is to make the brotherhoods, to join together and to make the groups and get rid of that North American individualism. Otherwise, you're going to be mowed over by these very cohesive Asians. And I hope everybody considers that. And you don't have to be super scared of China, but on the other hand, don't say it's just 1.3 billion people. Don't say, oh, per capita GDP is nothing, and all these other things which are false or irrelevant. Know the size of the issue we're dealing with, and it's just that big. It's not any bigger, it's not any smaller. So I hope this was of use to everybody, and amen and om. Or artificially strong emphasis on the so-called one-child policy. So, number one, the actual population of China is 1.6 or 1.7 billion people, around in there. They're lying by about the population of the United States. The reason that they're lying about their official figures have never been counted in a census. More interestingly, his wife nor his kids have ever been counted in a census. His wife is Chinese, and so the census people just kind of skip around, and they seem to skip us. So this is what happens on the street level, and they lie about all their official figures. The reason they're doing that is because each individual official from the public level gets rewards if he says that he has a lower population. So in our personal experience, Cousin Shamrock and myself. Home, brothers. And this video is about the great colonization conspiracy from China, and also the grand part of that is the lying about the population figures, and also a very strong, this is why when there was an expose, it was Jiangsu satellite TV, Jiangsu Weishi is our province, is Jiangsu. The satellite TV for that had an expose and a program about the real population figures, and about